with us. And we're going to sing an old song that Brother Ed loves. It's page 81 in that book. Blessed assurance, Jesus is mine. Oh, what a foretaste of glory divine, heir of salvation, purchased of God. Born of His Spirit, washed in His blood. This is my story. This is my song, praising my Savior all the day long. This is my story. This is my song, praising my Savior all the day long. Perfect submission, perfect in life, visions of rapture now burst on the side. Angels descending, bring from above echoes of mercy, whispers of love. This is my story. This is my song, praising my Savior all the day long. This is my story. This is my song, praising my Savior all the day long. Perfect submission, all is at rest. I in my Savior am happy and blessed, watching and praying, looking above, filled with His goodness, washed in His blood. Sing it like you mean it now. This is my story. This is my song, praising my Savior all the day long. This is my story. This is my song, praising my Savior all the day long. You may be seated.
What can I say? Papa used to tell the story of when I was born. After Mama had me, how Papa would sit me in his lap instead of teaching me how to say da or mama. Ed Ballew whispered in my ear continuously, over and over, Jesus, Jesus, Jesus. The first words that ever came out of my mouth was Jesus. Blessed assurance, that was his life. That was his song. When Papa told me that he wanted me to be more or less in charge of the funeral, make sure everything was carried out the way he wanted, I asked Papa, I said, what would you have me to say? And Papa told me this about 3 or 4 days before God called him home. And this more or less simplifies how my granddaddy was. He said, you tell them folks and everybody there, including all these men of God, he said, you tell them I love them. And by him showing that he loved you, you're showing in return that you love him. He told me to thank all the churches that are represented here today, how much he appreciated you providing financial support for him and my grandmother all these years. And he didn't finish it up. He said, so I could tell the story about Jesus. There's second thing he told me. See, when I was little, Papa called me sport. But as I got older, I went from a sport to a boy. And second thing he said, Mason, I just don't want some old dried funeral. He said, the time you get to the church, I'll already be rejoicing in heaven. He said, don't have some old sad, drawn out funeral for me. He said, just go to meeting and worship the Lord. My papa was the greatest man I ever knew. He was the biggest influence in my life. He was my hero. He was a man who you could observe his ways and his faith and see the Lord. His faith never wavered. He was a true Christian and practiced what he preached. When I took several people up there, I walked them up to the casket. There's no other better way to describe my granddaddy as this. He was the real deal. He was the real deal. To me, he was the greatest preacher in the world. I told Brother Bob Dart as he come in, I said, well, there's my second favorite preacher. But Papa was always the greatest preacher in the world to me. Papa was a man who had a 4th grade education. And God took a little boy out of Conesaga and used him all over this world to win thousands to the Lord. My papa was not a man of ego or thought high of himself. I asked Papa many times, I cannot tell you the times I've asked him this over and over and over. I'd say, Papa, do you not realize what an impact you have made? I said, you have impacted so many lives. My wife's heard me ask him that. He said, son, It's all him. It never was about Ed Ballew, the preacher. It was all about the Lord. He knew who did all the work through him. I have the most precious memories as a kid growing up. When most kids got out for the summer, for their summer vacation, back then sport went to revivals with Papa. I wouldn't trade nothing for riding down the road, not giving up some summer vacation, but to travel along with some people say, that's Brother Ed Ballew. But that was my Papa. I'm so glad. I want y'all to listen to me. I'm so glad that my Papa, Ed Ballew, showed me what the real, genuine power of God was all about. I can remember as a kid sitting on the front row with my Papa. I was the proudest kid in the world. People would come by and he'd sign their Bibles. I thought, that's my Papa.